Well, for a change, quite a short and sweet little video here, just to bring us to the end of our coverage on the Philidor. I remember the name there, opening. And we're now looking at a quick glance, I think, is sufficient to look at the middle game positions, which Black sometimes goes for. I've no idea why Black aims for these middle game positions from the opening, but that's not our problem. I mean, you know, I had a friend who played this opening all the time and went for these kind of positions, and I'm like, Gavin, why are you doing this? This is like you're putting yourself in a bad, cramped position with little play every single game. What's wrong with you? And he's like, well, I can't bother to learn anything else. And I'm like, you need to learn something else, and he clearly should have done. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the moves after, and again, like I say, you know, this is part one, this Gambit course, covering the main moves, E5, C5, C6, and E6. And in the second part of this Grandmaster Gambit course, we're going to be finding ways for you to fight like against D6, which will lead more to the black line setup I deal with. So we're going to deal with that in the next part. And obviously in that one, we've got allocains and perks to deal with. But we can only fit so much into this one, right? And I hope it's been worth it. It's been a real mammoth task, this. And after E5 here, we go here, and now our move, which is not as common as D4. We're not playing D4. We're sticking with Bishop C4 because it's much more tricky for Black to deal with. And now Bishop E7. And I kind of feel that this is probably one of Black's best choices. This is a somewhat better method of at least covering our knight coming there. It develops a piece, right? And Black might be wanting to get castled here. So we should now play D4 in the position. But I like getting this bishop here first because which move is more useful? I prefer having our bishop on this square. And we're now concentrating on the positions where Black captures on D4, where he plays E takes D4. These kind of middle game positions, the one I was just saying, are pretty bad for Black. We kind of looked at this before in, this kind of idea, should I say, what happens if Black doesn't do this? Well, if Black is trying to get like a black lion, knight D7 might be something he tries to play, but these just don't work for Black. Black's a little bit too loose. And this is something, you could trick a number of players out. With this move order, if they play E5 on move 1 and they try to get into sort of some kind of closed Philidor position, then you should always be thinking about ways just to burst them open. And if you start doing slow moves here, they're going to get this black line position, which is blooming good opening. You don't want to allow that. So we should open it up. D takes E5. And this is something when I did my black line course, I was very careful to avoid this kind of thing for Black because this is not what we want. Knight takes E5 is now best, but a lot of people have played D takes E5 here. But after one move in this position, Black is lost. It's a simple winning move here. Black's falling asleep in the opening. And one of our main targets, like we are going back to when we're a young kid going for Scholar's Mate throughout this course, so we're bringing back the childhood here, is F7. And simply Queen D5 is Black's a goner. I mean, what does Black do? Black's best bet is to give a piece here because Knight H6 is obviously met by Bishop H6. Black's completely lost. So he has to try Knight takes E5. But now we can win a safe pawn by eliminating this knight and then going back to our childhood with Queen H5. And we're getting this fun idea in a lot of the openings we're suggesting this course, which is great. And Black has nothing better than G6 when after Queen takes E5, Knight F6, let's stop him castling and develop a piece, Bishop H6. Black's a pawn down and struggling. A rook will shortly come here. Can't be bad, eh? So in this move order, of the Bishop E7, D4, taking is probably best. Now again, Queen takes runs into Knight C6, so Knight takes is sensible. And this is, this is the kind of position you might get if black insists on this Philidor middle game. And, we're not always going to be able to gambit in this course. We're going to try to, but it's impossible to play a forced gambit every single game if our opponent doesn't want to allow us. We're going to get a gambit in most of the time, and a very good one. But in this case, we're just going to have to be happy with an old line, which I think is just good for white. Black must develop, knight c3, and castles. And this is the position I was discussing with my friend, and I just don't understand. I mean, white's got much better development. White's got more space. This pawn cramps black, and that means that black's maneuvering with his pieces is much harder to achieve. The bishop is lacking air, and the other black pieces can't really find good squares. Now, you can play normally with castles here, but a move I like throwing in first here is just getting the last piece out. And where are we going to move that bishop? I quite like f4 in these lines. g5 might allow the bishops to be exchanged later on. e3 might get hit by knight g4. And this square controls e5. So if black ever gets a piece there, we have a little bit of pressure there. And we also can push on with e5. I would say here, castling queenside is something you can do, but we don't really need to here. It's very safe to castle kingside and just play that way with a nice edge. And then we're just going to put our rook on e1. We're going to stop any b5s. We want to just make sure we stop black gaining space with his pawns. This is not so much even about what we're doing. It's about stopping black what he wants to do. And he's going to try to go c6 and d5 or b5. So as long as we aim to stop these breaks in the position, he's going to be lacking air, and we can slowly but surely go for f4, but we're not rushing that move. It might seem strange we're putting our bishop here and going for f4, but I really like this bishop, and our bishop often is going to tuck itself on h2, like in the London system. That bishop hides on h2, and it's an assassin for the rest of the game. And I feel this is the best diagonal for the bishop. Rather than putting it on e3, pointing randomly over there, rather putting it on g5 where it can be exchanged, the slow plan we have time to do. Now, rook e8, I think, is probably best. Knight takes e4 is occasionally a blunder that black does at much lower level, because after knight takes d5, he can no longer... This is often an equalizing move, but in this case, we actually just go knight b5 because our bishop is showing why it's gone to that square. We kind of stop this equalizing move because of our bishop. And that's something black could easily fall into. Now, c6, I mean, you can go a4 here, but d5 is not really threatened. And actually, there's an argument to be said that b5 is weakening in this case, because I did mention black wants to play this b5 move, but really only when he's got some good pieces behind it, like a knight on c5. And we might be able to get a gambit in here by following a game of David Navarro, the very strong Czech 2700 player, by just castling. And if he does continue with b5, let's now drop our bishop to d3. Okay, we could even try gambiting bishop b3, but actually we're just going to put our pieces where we think they're going to have more power. And after something like b4, knight comes back. c5 is something black does, but he's not doing much. Knight back to f3, and now we can bring our pieces around to the king side. And we're trying to claim here that we can go a3 or c3 to fight against that one. Maybe this is actually one of black's better tries, but I still prefer white. This is always a weakness. And actually, again, against a6, it's similar. We don't, in this position, yet have to fear b5. Again, a4, I don't see a problem with playing. But just to give you a different idea of what you can do, castling is all right. And after this one, now we can even go a bit more adventurous. Bishop d5. Don't be scared to give up your bishop in this course for the knight if it gives you tempo gaining and pressure. And after knight takes, knight to d5. And here again, we're trying to claim that this break is premature because black hasn't got that development. And a standard move against this is a4. a4 is a standard way to push for an advantage over there, to try and undermine those pawns. And this is a way to get an edge. So these are just other ways you can play in this position to not play a4 immediately. Okay, so rook e8. And now we castle. Our move's very easy. Bishop f8. This is the most common way to play. We're only going to sacrifice it as a reason. We don't need to here. Rook e1. This is following Stripczynski, Christensen, Rapid 2009. And black's counterplay is kept at bay. And now after c6, well, I would say in this position, he's a little bit better structured. So let's play a4, which you could have done in those other lines. I'm just showing you a different way to play. And now maybe a5, because black wants to try and get his knight to one of these two squares. But so what? We now come up with a plan, which I think is well worth remembering, and it is h3. And this bishop can drop back here. It can also go to e3, but our general idea is f4. Let's just see where that bishop's going to go. Well, knight bd7 is normal. And again, knight takes e4, this trying to way to equalize, and d5. It doesn't work here because the clever move, knight f6 check. And that rook is on pre, so you have to go g takes. And now we just swap rooks, move our bishop, big attack. For example, like this, and our queen is coming. So knight d7 should be played. And now, again, we're just going to play moves to restrain black. And one very clever move when you've gone a4, and this is why I kind of like this idea of putting our bishops here, is bishop a2. And this is getting the bishop out of the way, getting out of the way of any hits where it might be exposed. And what we're saying to black is, well, we're not in a rush here. This is one time we're not in a rush. I'm afraid to say we're going to play a bit more slower. And given a chance here, well, we don't even need to go for f4. Our last piece is the queen. We could go queen d2. I think in this situation, I'd probably try to even bring it around here in some cases. And after knight e5, well, you now have the choice of playing this bishop h2, which I kind of like because there's some humor to this kind of move, and f4 comes. And also, bishop e3 makes a lot of sense as well. Depends what you prefer. And f4 comes. I might even go bishop h2 because in this variation, we're supporting a later e5. But after here, I'm still wondering what black's trying to achieve here. He's got his knight in the middle. It's going to run away after f4. And when we play f4, what are we doing when the knight moves? Our queen comes to f3. So I'll stick with bishop e3, but you can imagine it's on e2. It doesn't matter. Something like this. f4. The knight still wandering around, and I like this square for my queen. I get my last piece into the game, and then I'm going to start just charging and checkmating. Very nice. And do look at the bishop on a2, how very strong that bishop is. I mean, could well be a game winner later on. So, okay, after bishop c4, black can take on d4. But in my eyes, and in the eyes of theory, and in the eyes of strong players, there's a reason black doesn't do this line. And the reason is white is just simply better, space advantage. You don't need to go crazy here. If you try to refute this in pure aggression, you might go wrong. So in this one case, we're just building up a bit slower than we have done in some of the other variations. There's no need to go mental here.